Hi everyone, how's it going? My name is Juan Contreras, and I'm going to be doing my presentation on the biological, sociological, and academic effects of video gaming. This is for my new media and new literacies class at SUNY Empire. So why did I choose to do my discussion on gaming? I think that regardless of the positive or negatives of gaming, which we will talk about, gaming is a huge part of our students' lives. They spend so much time of their day doing it, and many of us simply don't understand it. Often, I don't think we give gaming the credibility or the credence that it deserves. I've seen a lot of teachers that really just write it off, saying I don't play video games or I don't really have an interest in them. However, I argue that being that they spend so much of their time doing this, and we spend so much of our time with them, we should try to understand this media. I was reading an article in my other class about diversity, and I came across an article by a Native American man who works with culturally based educations. In the article, he mentioned how the Native American children that attend a lot of those schools are essentially losing their culture because of television at the time. This is an article written a few decades ago. I argue that this has shifted, that it's no longer the television, but it's become video gaming. I think gaming is absolutely a culture. I've read studies that mention that it's also a culture. And I think that we would do well to understand this culture as well as its effects on our children, for better or for worse. Knowing all of this, I think, can assist us in understanding our students in a better fashion and understanding what makes them tick and understanding their behaviors. Now, I want to go into some statistics about video gaming patterns and that children exhibit. Some of what I found says that on average, boys spend twice as much time as girls playing video games, and in a lot of the studies that I read, these numbers were actually the difference was actually even larger. I've read one study that said that it's a ratio of 8 to 2. Now, something that came up that I found interesting is that in our public education system, female teachers outnumber male teachers 3 to 1. That means that most of our education system either doesn't play video games or has never played video games. In my opinion, I think that this is a huge missed opportunity for establishing connections with our students. Especially considering that realistically we're not going to do away with video gaming anytime soon. In my experience, I've had countless conversations with students about their gaming and about their interest within gaming. And I've always found that it really does help to establish rapport. This established rapport has led to trust between that my students have held for me, because I don't judge their hobby and I show interest in it. And I think that this has many times worked to my benefit. Some not so rosy statistics are that video gamers spend about 8 hours and 27 minutes each week playing video games. So that is a large chunk of time. But this is an average. There are, of course, much higher numbers than that. 44% of children play more than 7 hours per week, and 25%, that's that upper fourth, spend more than 12 hours a week. This is a night and a half of sleep. This is a gigantic amount of time, and that's not even the most. 25% of our population is a large chunk. Additionally, a third of 8 to 15-year-olds play games for 5 hours in a row. I found that just insane. That is so much time. The articles that I read called this binge gaming. So let's continue on, and we're going to talk about the effects of gaming. So I found some pretty interesting studies about the effects of gaming. I found some biological studies, psychological, some academic studies of the effect, studies that measured the academic effects of video games, and I had found studies that measured, I guess you could say, the sociological effects of video games. One of the sociological effects of video games. Now, one of the biggest effects of video games, and something that we are probably all pretty aware of, is that video games are certainly addicting. That game of Candy Crush, or there was a game a few years ago where you had to go and farm and get your crops when you were done. Super addicting. I know lots of people I know lost hours in those games. But is it actually addicting? Can you actually be addicted to video games? So I was curious about this, and I found a study that had neuroimaging of the brains of gamers. And what was really interesting and kind of a little scary was that these studies indicated that the brains of gamers created similar situations or similar, what's the word? Let me rephrase that. Created similar addiction, behavioral addiction patterns as those found in substance-related addiction brains. So let me phrase that again. The neuroimaging studies found similarities between the brains of gamers and the brains of individuals who have substance-related addictions. So that was a little scary, especially me being a gamer. I love to play games, although not as much as I don't have as much time to do it as I used to. In addition, these same studies found that there were changes in the function and structure of the brain that were longer lasting than when you just put the game down. What had essentially happened, the study said, was that there was a neuroadaptation in the way that the brain works that was created as an excessive engagement with internet and gaming. So spending too much time either with the internet or gaming does create some brain changes, it seems. Again, this study in particular focused on gaming, but when I read it, I wondered what would the effects of other studies that measured other things that I guess we could call addicting. And well, I'll talk about that more in a little bit. So allow me to continue. And loot boxes. Yes, this is a big issue with gaming currently. Loot boxes. Are loot boxes gambling? Actually, the articles that I read mentioned loot boxes as a form of hybrid gambling. So loot boxes are essentially like a slot machine. You either pay for the coin that you put in to roll the slots, or you earn it through gaming. What you get, the reward, is you can get something like a skin, which is sort of like a costume for whatever character you're playing, or you can get a weapon for your character, or a skill for your character. Now, what these studies that I read, or what I was looking for, was whether loot boxes increase the chances that individuals will encounter gambling problems later on in their lives. And the studies that I read for games that have loot boxes were a little scary. Keep in mind though, not all games have loot boxes or use them. A lot of gaming companies that I've seen are actually anti-loot box. They see it as a predatory type of thing where they prey on children. So onto the studies. The studies found that young adults who do purchase loot boxes are more likely to be gamblers. I don't think this is very surprising. What was a little surprising was how much more likely they are to become or to create gambling issues. The study said that the odds of problems with gambling were 11.4 times higher among those who purchase loot boxes with their own money. 11.4 times higher. That is a huge, huge likelihood or chances of likelihood of having a gambling issue. So definitely something to think about. And we'll talk about looking for alternatives for gaming. And I think that for games with loot boxes, it would be beneficial oftentimes if you have a child who is playing a game that has lots of loot boxes or or pays for loot boxes. Maybe sometimes it is best to look for an alternative to that. This is another hot topic right now in gaming is, do video games provoke real life violence? All of the evidence, all of the studies that I read, were either, obviously they either said yes or no, but there were some that said yes, some that said no. And I went to the American Psychological Association website, and basically what they said is that at this point it is inconclusive if video games do provoke real life violence. Unfortunately, we don't know yet. So what the APA does say is that because we don't know, you might want to use a little bit of prevention. If maybe don't let your child play that violent video game, or look for an alternative to that video game that isn't as violent. They gave the example of the game of Minecraft. So Minecraft does have a game mode that many would consider to be violent. What the article said is that there are other forms of the game Minecraft that aren't as violent. Even though the evidence is inconclusive at this point, sometimes it might be worth it to try to prevent any issues. Now, believe it or not, there are benefits. It sounds like I've been trash talking gaming for the last 5.5 minutes. So I found an article that basically said that the reason we are finding so many problems with gaming and so many studies are finding issues with gaming is because that's all they're looking for. They're only looking for the issues. There is a shortage of studies that look for benefits of gaming, and this was one of those articles. I found a few interesting benefits of gaming that I had no idea existed, or I had never thought of. So this is kind of like an abstract kind of argument, is that they compared gaming to other forms of art and entertainment, sort of like maybe television or going to a museum, and gaming is different than that. In gaming, they quoted, players cannot passively surrender, and they must actively engage with their systems, which makes gaming almost like a sport. You can't just sit back and enjoy it. You have to be participating in it. There's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of therapeutic benefits that have been looked at because of this. This article and a few other articles also mentioned that there are 4 key areas where gamers may benefit an individual. They identified these as cognitive processes, motivational benefits, emotional benefits, and social benefits. And I'm going to get into those right now. So the cognitive benefits. So the cognitive benefits are that gamers outperformed non-gamers in most pattern detection tasks. Additionally, the studies that I read suggested that gamers are able to allocate more of their attention more efficiently. So this may be related to some of those neuroimaging studies. Maybe these are some of the changes that do occur because of gaming. I don't know. This is just something that I randomly thought of. Motivation. So gaming is an activity where you do have to be persistent. You do have to put in that effort if you want to get better at something. The article that I was reading kind of says that this effort and that benefit that you're able to put into gaming is something that many can transfer over to their real daily lives. You know? And we all know that motivation and persistence are the keys to success and achievement. So perhaps there is a relation here, is what the article was kind of getting at. As for the emotional benefits, gaming has been shown to increase mood, increase positive emotions, promote relaxation, and has allowed many gamers to kind of take pride in their accomplishments. Some would argue that sometimes gaming that entirely depends on the game. There are games that their only focus is to make you lose and get you frustrated, but that's an entirely different story. On to the social benefits. I think most of us are pretty aware of the social benefits of gaming. This wasn't really such a thing when I was a kid because there was no online gaming around when I was really young. But nowadays, there is a huge social aspect to gaming. Just in this year alone, considering the pandemic, I don't really know what we would have done without gaming during the pandemic, when our students weren't able to visit each other at their houses. In my class, for example, it was almost like every day, or at least three or four times a week, where a student would call out another student at the end of a class and say, "Hang on, I want to talk to you." Sometimes I stayed on to talk to the students, and they would say, "Hey, do you want to meet on this game? I'll see you in a little bit." And it was a chance for them to really, even though they weren't able to be with each other in person, they were with each other in a game. And I think that games really did come through during the pandemic and kind of erased some of that isolation that so many of us felt. I know this worked for me. I got to see my brother. I got to talk to my brother and a few other people through the gaming. I was pretty thankful for that. So, the social aspects and positive aspects of gaming. Personally, I don't game as much as I used to, but when I did game, I would game with my cousins or people that I knew. And since I've stopped gaming, I don't actually speak to those people much anymore, which is a shame. Gaming really opens up an opportunity to really make it easy to, I guess, hang out with someone else. And it's worked with me and my brother, it's worked with me and my cousins. So yeah. Now, these are recommendations. I just want to finish this up. These are recommendations for how to play in a healthy way. We should be setting limits on how much kids can play. 2 hours of screen time, 2 hours of screen-based entertainment per day should be the maximum that students should have. We should keep tabs on children while they play. We should know what they're playing, who they're talking to, and what they're talking about if possible. We should look for signs of trouble. That means lack of sleep, loner behavior, not wanting to socialize with others. There was another important one I wrote down. Where is this? Definitely. Academic performance and even healthy weights. These are all things we should be looking out for if we have children who game. Additionally, playing together. get on that. The article saying that we should get on that system with our kids once in a while. It's a perfect bonding experience to do something that they have an interest in. Lastly, we should try to offer other alternatives to gaming that provide what's called a similar sense of mastery, something like a sport or another type of hobby that they can work on to get better. So that is my presentation, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, video games are a great hobby in moderation. It's an excellent escape. It's provided tons of rapport building activities between me and my students. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.